Good evening. Well, the winter fuel allowance has gone for 10 million pensioners. It was a very big parliamentary majority of 120 for the government, although one Labour MP, John Trickett, did vote against his own party and about 52 abstained, but still a very big victory. We're told, of course, this is all about plugging the black hole of £22 billion that Labour say they found, although rather more cynically, I'd say the black hole's £2.7 trillion, which is the size of the national debt. Some of the response to this has been pretty extraordinary. And one of my constituents who's spoken out really strongly on this is Jim O'Dwyer. Now, I mentioned Jim because he's somebody that I met during the campaign, and he's 99 years old, and he did 31 missions in a Lancaster bomber as Tail End Charlie in World War II. And the reason he won't get the winter fuel allowance is because he has a very, very small private pension that comes in. And Jim Dwyer is very clear about it. He says, look, this is disgusting. After all I've done for the country, why am I being treated this way? Now, of course, there are wealthy pensioners that were getting the winter fuel allowance, but quite why we couldn't pick up the idea that Lord Cameron pushed yesterday, that we just don't give the allowance to those paying 40p tax or more, I just don't know. I wonder, folks at home, is this Labour's great folly? Let me know what you think. Farage at gbnews.com. And the quote from my constituent, the 99-year-old, was, "We pay in all our lives and this small perk is cut. It is absolutely disgusting what this government is doing and the way they're treating us after all we've done for our country." And I bet you, over the course of the next few days, you'll see a lot more Jim O'Dwyers appearing in our tabloid newspapers. I'm fairly certain of it. I'm joined in the studio by Kwasi Kwarteng, former Conservative Member of Parliament and Chancellor, Joe Phillips, Paddy Ashdown's former press secretary, and many other things, campaigns, media. But I'm joined first down the line by Ivor Kaplan, former Labour Defence Minister, who joins me from Brighton. And it would be fair to say, Ivor, that there have been some Conservative voices questioning this over the years, but I understand you fully support what the government have done today.
Absolutely, Nigel. I think this was the right decision to make. I know it's an early decision in terms of where we are as a Commons, but obviously there's work to do up until you get to the budget. And so by dealing with this one and dealing with all the issues, I think that's right. Can I just help? I hope this is helping anyway, and just say one thing. I heard you just say about 52 Labour MPs. But what we do actually know is only 12 of those are actually people who voted or abstained without permission. The rest are not here for whatever government reason they may be, something which is not an unusual situation in any situation for the government. There are people abroad, there are people doing other things, but that's the numbers that I've got.
Well, OK, whether you're right or wrong, what really matters, Ivor, is not what the backbenchers think of what the front bench has done. It's what the country thinks. And, you know, I mentioned my 99-year-old constituent who did his tour as Tail End Charlie, and you see cases like that. Doesn't feel quite right, does it?
Well, I think the whole thing about the winter payment has always been something that has made it very difficult in some occasions. There have been moments right through since Gordon Brown, I think, first suggested this in the late 90s, that there were people who wanted to change things. And we've never actually got to it, even though I think deep down we all knew that the pensions were just not working properly for everyone. And as you just said in your introduction, Nigel, there were people who are on significant sums of money who were still taking their 300 quids. So there's always been this issue. You can go back over the last 15 years and you can find that sort of comment from people who have different views, but all really joined together on this matter.
OK, Ivor Kaplan, you could not be clearer. Thank you for coming on and making that point. Kwasi, I mean, of course, we know that it's ludicrous that wealthy pensioners should have been receiving this. I did think the Lord Cameron suggestion was quite clever.
So, look, this has been an issue that's been debated for years. And when I was in the Treasury, before that, people would always come up, the civil servants would always say, what about the winter fuel payment? And generally, chancellors and people in political life have taken a political decision and said, we can't harm the most vulnerable people in our society. Now, what Labour have done, and let's be frank about this, is they've made a political decision. They've come in, they've only been there, 2 months? And they've said, we're going to do inflation-busting deals for unions.
Yep.
And we're going to essentially pay for that by taking away pensioner benefits. That wasn't forced upon them. That was a political decision
and is that
they
because,
have made.
Is that because they think the pensioner population won't vote for them next time?
They will have made political and economic decisions. But what Rachel Reeves is doing is saying, OK, we're giving the unions more than inflation. Inflation's at 2%. They're giving them 8% a year in some cases for 3 years. And they're saying, in order to pay for this, we're going to take away winter fuel payment. Now, it's their prerogative to do that, but I think politically and morally, some people might say, this was the wrong choice.
It's a funny one, Joe, that Rachel Reeves herself has claimed £3,700 in heating allowances off the taxpayer for her second home. It's not a good look, is it?
No, it's not. And actually, all of this, as Ivor said, and you and Kwasi have said, it is utterly ridiculous that wealthy people, are being paid this money and have been over the years. And the triple lock is much more important because it increases pensions. Just a couple of quick things. The pay awards that were given to public sector workers were recommended, as you very well know, by the independent pay review bodies. There are more pressing issues, actually, I think, but the government have handled this so badly. This has been running for weeks and weeks and weeks. She announced it as a total shock to everybody.
It was a shock.
A week before Ofgem announced the new cap on energy prices, 2 months, nearly 3 months before her budget, with no indication of what might be done, whether it's going to target council tax bans or whether it's to raise the personal... there are loads and loads of things.
Here's the funny thing about it. Here's the funny thing about it. As Kwasi, as Joe quite accurately says, it came as a bolt from the blue. The bit that surprised me, no impact assessment had been done.
No. So
I find that really surprising.
So they've done a political decision. I mean, look, I've been there. I've done budgets that have, surprised markets.
No question about it.
And there's a sense in which, I totally get where they're coming from. They want to come in, they want to get things done, in a dramatic way, and they're hoping that sometime, in the middle of the Parliament, everyone will have forgotten about it. The danger with this, and I remember the coalition government, when the Lib Dems voted for tuition fees.
I was thinking that,
They never recovered.
No,
they got 23% in the election. By the end of the year, 2010, they were on 10%, I checked. And 5% of that was from the tuition fee.
Hence my audience question tonight. Is this Labour's folly?
So time will tell. They're hoping that, in 2 years' time, people will have forgotten about this and there'll be other things that are
or
on the
even
agenda.
by next April when pensions go up, or if there is something announced in the budget in October. But if you're going to do something like this and you're going to make it a political statement about black holes and finances, surely it is more sensible to hit the wealthiest rather than a group of people, and every single newspaper, every single MP can wheel out somebody. They're not finding people going, well, actually, I don't need it, I'll just die another case.
Well, you're looking actually at sort of, in some constituencies, you're looking at 10,000 voters.
So the problem,
the impact, and are the Liberal Democrats likely to be beneficiaries of this?
I don't think so. I mean, today's vote was completely, unnecessary, and I think one should give credit to Keir Starmer for letting. They don't need it.
He had no choice, did
he?
Well,
he did. He could have just.
He could have waited. You see, the clever thing about it is that it would have been much riskier doing it in a budget.
Why?
Because actually you don't want rebels in a budget. This was an indicative vote. It wasn't really something that was binding. If the number of people objecting to a budget on a vote would be much more politically significant. Yeah, exactly. So in a way, he's taken the heat now. He's got the vote. He can say, look, my party are behind me. We've got a 120 majority, and he can move on. And actually it makes it less likely that he'll do a...
Well, and also, I think, as Ivor said, the rebels, the abstainers. You know, there's only a dozen of them.
You say that.
Well, I don't buy that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But the reality
I don't
is...
buy
Nigel
that
is
at
an
all.
MP and I've been an MP.
Yeah.
What will happen? The whips will say, "Look, I know you're uncomfortable about this.
don't come in.
Why don't you?
Well, maybe
be scared?
Maybe they will.
And
I mean,
they will have
were
those
aware.
conversations.
I don't buy that.
You know,
I don't
some
buy
were.
that.
But the point is, it is not a massive rebellion.
No, you're right.
It
and actually,
is-
generally,
It is all puff and wind.
In percentage terms, it's not a huge
No.
amount,
And
either
also,
way, whether it's 12 or 50.
And Nigel, you'll find this at the beginning of the Parliament. The rebellions are quite small because people they're newbies. They're getting the hang of it. They're trying to work out how things work. The middle of the Parliament is where I think there'll be proper rebellions by that point.
Wouldn't surprise me. Well, we'll see. I have a feeling the impact of this might last in the minds of some people a little bit longer than my panel suspect.